Join me right now on Kumite TV is UFC bantamweight prospect Ryan MacDonald. What's going on, Ryan?
Same old, just finished the training session at Rise Combat Sports here in Tucson. So, yeah, just leaving up at the gym and getting it in with you.
All right, man. Well, before we get into your training, let's talk about last weekend UFC 241. Casey Kenny
Yeah,
was,
damn
how was
man.
that, man? Watching him fight and putting on the performance against a guy that should be fighting at featherweight.
He looked good, man, and he's fought at flyweight before. He was actually struggling to keep the weight on for this camp. So he actually felt like a bantamweight this camp though. So I mean, yeah, he's fighting pretty much a guy who's two weight classes higher than him, and he did everything he trains to do. He's phenomenal in the gym, and I think he put that performance out there for sure.
It must be nice to have him go out there and perform the way he did. Now you go into your fight with that momentum, with him. Is he coming back to kind of help you before you go out to your fight?
Yeah, I believe so. I think he's all got a little minor injuries. We all get them in the fight, but yeah, I think he'll be there to help. And there, if not, there's a lot of good guys there. All the time. Chris Carriaso, Jose Alday. I brought some guys from Nebraska down with me, so I have four guys of my own training partners that are here helping me too. So it's been great.
Now, going back to that fight, before that fight, Bermudez, he missed weight, in his previous fight.
Mhm.
And then everybody knows that he's a big bantamweight. Before they weighed in, they changed the bout to a catchweight bout. And I thought that that was kind of shitty for them to do because Kenny, if he makes weight and Bermudez does not make weight, he can still take that fight and get that extra cash. And I talked to Casey about that before the fight, and he likes taking that
Mhm.
extra check. Do you think that's kind of messed up that they changed it to a catchweight fight and it kind of allowed him to, make the weight?
I think that's California's rules, as far as I know. I know that you have to come in on fight week under a certain limit, or they bump your bout up, or move it up like that. But again, they give him the option of what they want to do. So I think they got something squared away. I'm sure they did. Casey's a smart guy. He's not gonna let that go unsaid. You know what I mean? And that's just too much weight to just let go without money. I mean, at the end of the day, we're prize fighters, and that can be a big paycheck if you miss weight. So I mean, why wouldn't you get it? And so I mean, again, if he didn't get the money, then yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's just gonna propel him quicker. You know what I mean? Because he beat a undefeated guy, 14-0, who should be a featherweight, and all finishes, I think, as far as Bermuda is. So, I mean, you know, that just makes him look all the more better.
Now, as a guy that's starting out in his UFC career, it seems like a lot of guys coming into the promotion are getting busted by USADA after their first fight. What are your thoughts? When you see that in the news, guys coming in, winning or losing, or sometimes even before they make their debut, get flagged by USADA.
I just think it's, you know, honestly, I don't think a lot of them know better. There's just so many tainted supplements and so many shady companies out there, and in this game, everybody's trying to find an edge. So like they're trying all kinds of supplements, and shoot, all my buddies have been huge, supplement takers, and I was never one of those guys because I'm not much of a lifter anyway. I like don't do much heavy lifting for camps and stuff. So like I never needed the protein shakes, or I never wanted to put on weight. I was comfortable where I was at. So I mean, for me, it's not a big concern because I've never taken supplements since I was a kid. So I tried Advocare once and took a couple products for like a week, and it just got too much. Like I had to set alarms for when to take my stuff, and it just for me it was just a headache. So I was like, I'm good.
Let's go back, to your UFC debut versus Chris Gutierrez. You went to the judges; it didn't go your way. Take me back to that night and give me your assessment of the fight.
It was kind of it was one of those things, opportunities you can't really pass up on. You know, I was dealing with some back issues, and I had just turned down a couple fights for LFA, a couple in a row, and then my back got to the point where I was training consistently again, and then I got the call for that, and I was just like, I think we're gonna do it. Obviously, it's 5 weeks away, which was a little bit of a headache, but for me, I was like, you kind of got to jump at this opportunity, and so I did, and then at that point in time, I didn't have a lot of money, so uh, getting the sponsorships together, which isn't really a problem. I have a good support group. That was just overwhelming with the little amount of time I had. You know what I mean? So like I had to like put it all together in short time, and then I really only got out here to Tucson for I think it was like a week. I was down here for training, and it was the first time I'd been down here, so I was settling into a new gym with new guys and new training partners, new coaches, and it was just all kind of taking in too much all at once. So I mean, no excuses. I mean, I went out there and I showed a lot of heart. I fought my ass off, but it's just one of those things when you sacrifice so much, like 100% of the time, and you're just trying to crunch. You're in crunch time essentially. It's just stressful, and when you go into a fight with a lot of stress, it can just throw you out of your game. And I didn't feel like I flowed. I felt I was really embarrassed of the performance I put in because like it looked nothing like I've looked before. It was probably my worst performance to date, but it was at the highest level. So it was pretty embarrassing for me. So I'm making sure that doesn't happen again.
You said you had some back issues. Did you take care of that after this fight?
Yeah, it was just the physical therapy and staying up on it. Like I've been using like CBD lotions and stuff when it gets sore and tight, and got one of those 10 power massagers. Been getting massages weekly. Just doing all the things that I have to invest in myself now. My body is what I'm putting on the line, and it's my job essentially. So I have to keep it maintained and everything running smoothly. So I've been feeling pretty well this camp, so it's been good.
In that fight, you had a pretty nasty cut on your hairline. It was bleeding everywhere. That was like a lot of people were like, "Dang, that guy's bleeding all over the place." Through the fight. How long before you got back into training? How long did it take you to heal that cut?
Honestly, I jumped right back in the next week as far as sparring. I just I had a couple guys getting ready for fights, so I put on really heavy headgear and just warned them, don't hit up there, don't hit up on the forehead, which isn't really a spot you want to hit anyways. You know what I mean? Because you can hurt your hand. So yeah, it was just one of those things. Just uh, when you have a small tight knit team, you can get away with stuff like that. Guys can take care of each other a lot more, and it's not all about winning. So and that's as far as me. I like those kind of atmospheres, anyways. So it was just a lot of like I jumped right back into training pretty much right after. I
Now
had a
you're
little shin injury from the fight, but it was just messing with my movement more or less, and I just had to, get that checked up on and get that going well, and everything's fine now. So
Well, that's good, man, because now you're heading up north to Vancouver to face Louis Smolka. He is a veteran. He has some name recognition there. It's almost like you kind of got getting a second chance with this big name, And what are your thoughts on Smolka?
yeah, like you said, he's got that big name, and he's another one of those guys that he's been around forever, but he's like my age. He's like 27 or something. So I mean, it's really cool because I've watched him for a long time. You know, and I know a lot of guys who have fought him. Chris Carriasso, who's coaching me a lot here, he fought him, back in the day. So we've got a lot of good insight on him. There's plenty of video, there's plenty of film out there. So that's not an issue. With Gutierrez, he only had one fight in the UFC, so there wasn't a lot to look at. But yeah, it's been nice to have kind of a big name, and I think he's ranked higher than my last opponent, so that's better for me. And yeah, like you said, it's a full camp. I've been training for 10 weeks. I've known about this fight for 10 weeks, so It's literally double the camp I had for my last one. So it's been awesome.
Is this your second camp in Arizona?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So you said last time you were kind of like a rush through the camp. Now this time you're there.
Hmm.
You brought four guys with you, and now you
Yep.
got all these guys that you're rotating and having rounds with. How is it now? You can kind of adjust yourself with time.
Oh man, it's like the difference between having something brand new and having something used. You know what I mean? Like it it's just that simple. It's awesome. You don't have to worry about crunching all your sparring into literally 1 week. I had to like literally spar hard every single day and not work much technique with the coaches other than little tits and tats to add to my game. There's not much you can add in 5 weeks. So it's been huge, and we learned a lot from the last fight. You always learn a lot from a loss. So it's been awesome. Yeah, it's way different.
What makes Arizona the best fit for you?
We have our jiu-jitsu coach out here. His name is Jerome Gage. He was in my corner. And he affiliates through our gym, which is my gym I run back in North Platte, Nebraska. So he does our jiu-jitsu in North Platte, and he's from the area. So he's from here in Tucson, and he flies back and does some of our jiu-jitsu down there. So having him, full time, like I get to train with him daily here, and I get to train with really good dudes, and we on the way up, we hit like Jackson Wink, we hit a bunch of different Fight Ready, different spots like that, just to get different looks and different coaches, and we're just taking in the whole experience, and probably gonna finish out the camp with hitting the PEI on the end of it. So it's been awesome.
Is that going to be the first visit to the PI?
My second one actually. Yeah. I went for the when I was supposed to be on the Contender Series, and yeah, that place is off the chain, man. For real, it's awesome.
What do you like about it so much?
It's just I feel like every gym I've ever been to, it's got like bits and pieces of every gym, and then all the recovery. You got the cafeteria there. All everybody's super nice, and like when I went down there the first time, it was uh, there was a guy from Louisiana who cooked us up a meal, and everybody was super cool, and yeah, it was just like little things like that. You're pretty much catered being a UFC athlete. You know what I mean? They just get everything they can for you. Now they got trifecta, doing the meal plans and all that. So you're just taken care of.
After running the table, outside the promotion, you make your debut, you suffer your first loss. Have you added anything new? You're like, hey, I need to add this to my regimen and it's going to make me a better fighter.
Um, yes and no. I'm doing more gi jujitsu. I mean, I've always done gi jujitsu, but where I'm from, we only have it 1 day a week because it's not as big in Nebraska. But like they say, the gi it's you just get to focus in on littler things, and it's just such a slower game, so you have to focus on more technique and slow it down. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. There's a lot of high level grapplers out here, so you get beat up and learn a lot of stuff.
Talking about slowing down the game, in the last event, UFC 241, there was a bantamweight fight where one of the bantamweights, Kang, right? He went and took down his opponent and he was in side control and the referee stood him up. It kind of goes against what you're practicing, right? It's like, of course, when you get to the ground, you can't get to the position, like instantly. You have to take your time, right? So what did you think
Right.
about,
Okay.
standing up the fight, especially in side control?
Yeah, that's silly, man. I've watched fights. There was a fight in specific that was in Omaha, and I think it was Cassius Kane against Maki Pitolo. I want to say, but Maki was in a full mount, and I may be wrong on this, but he was in a full mount, and people were just screaming, booing, obviously because he's a hometown guy, and they were booing, and the referee literally sat there, which he's my favorite referee from Nebraska, and he was just sitting there and ignoring it. Yeah, he's like, this is a full mount. I'm not taking this position. He worked hard to get it, And 5 minutes isn't a lot of time to get to mount. And for people to think that you can just get to mount in 5 seconds, yeah, it happens, but very seldom. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's kind of frustrating. But then you go to other places that are more knowledgeable of MMA and jiu-jitsu, and like Brazil, and they're clapping when stuff like that happens, and it's a completely different feel. But then you go to somewhere bigger, or like in America, and they just want to see knockouts and they're booing. So it's just one of those things you have to get used to, I guess.
As a up and comer, the bantamweight division, it seems like it's at a standstill at the top. You got Triple C. He's running around chasing after Valentina Shevchenko. Who do you think should fight for the interim title? It seems like the interim title is gonna come.
Um, Man, I can't even think who's at the top now. What's the rankings? Do you know offhand?
You got Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan. You know,
I'd
who
like to
else is up
see,
there?
honestly, I'd like to see Corey Sandhagen against Peter Yan. I mean, I don't know if they're ready for a title yet because they haven't really got that win, those performances that people are like really high on them about, or beat like a really big name to get them the big name. But those two, I think that would be a hell of a fight for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That is a high-paced fight. Both those guys fight at a high rate, which would be exciting to watch. What do you think
Hmm.
of Triple C running around chasing after Shevchenko?
I understand what he's doing, man. It's funny. I just met him at Fight Ready, the other day, and he was a cool dude, man. He had a lot of good tips and tricks. He wasn't worried about adding to anybody's game, which is really cool. But I understand what he's doing. It's funny to me. It's funny to other people. It's like you know, king of cringe. He's cringy, but it cracks me up, and I understand what he's doing. So it is
Yeah, I
what it
think it's
is.
good for the sport. He has become a character in the sport, and you can't deny his credentials, man. He's a champion in two divisions, and he won an Olympic gold
Nope,
medal. How can you fight that?
you can't. You can't.
You can't say anything. One more
Right.
thing before I let you go, man. Do you consider yourself a fighter or a martial artist?
Consider myself a martial artist. There's a lot of guys that when they're not in camp, or they're not, they don't have a fight in mind, they're not in the gym. And those guys in my eyes are the guys that are just fighters, and they just love to compete. And there's a difference. There's a lot of guys that transition over from wrestling, or maybe they're coming from boxing and they just love the competition feel. But for me, like, I'm learning whatever I can add to my game. Like, we have you know traditional martial artists right next door to our gym, and if they wanted to come over and teach something a day at my school, like, more power to them. Like, we could probably add one of their things to a jiu-jitsu feel, or to an MMA context. So I always love watching like traditional stuff, but you got to make it work in your sparring game. So I mean, for me, I'm a martial artist at heart. I love watching old school martial arts movies and all that good stuff. So definitely a martial artist. I'm in the gym all year round.
All right, man. September 14th, UFC on ESPN plus 16, Vancouver, Canada. Thank you, Ryan, for the time, and good luck on your fight and your future, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you, man.